degrees Celsius, and the snow is quite moist. So you can see that the snow keeps falling down, and it rather has very large snowflakes. So this is one of the extreme weathers that we are seeing in the east of America since March this year. Well, March represents the early spring, and this shows an extreme weather because we're still having this coldness in early spring. And it's called actually northeaster in the United States. Northeaster particularly refers to snowy weathers, snowstorms in the east of America, in New England area. So please have a look at the snows. On the road, there is almost no car. And in Washington, D.C., we have a lot of government authorities, and most of the employees are now at home. They don't go to work today, and the schools are closed. Many of the airlines are also canceled. We're also seeing people shoveling away the snow. Yes, it's snowing very heavily. The snow has fallen since 2 a.m. till now, and it's expected to stop or to go down in this afternoon, but now we're still seeing very heavy snow. Okay, now we're going to the airport, the Reagan Airport, very close to us. You can see many flights are canceled. Okay, ready to go. Actually, when I woke up in the morning, the snow was actually not this strong. It was weaker, but then it grew stronger and stronger. And on the road, we found the road was very moist. It was very difficult to brake, and there were really not many cars around. So now then, we have changed to another bigger car to adapt to this extreme weather, and that feels much better now. It's a four-wheel driven car. Very few people, very few pedestrians around, and the government warns the people against this weather. Yes, it's very difficult to brake, as you see. A few days ago, it was rather very warm. So yesterday night, the snow kept falling, but there was not much snow on the ground. There was a lot of frost on the ground, which really made it very difficult for cars. And we can see a lot of vehicles shoveling away the snow. Earlier, we can see actually snows hitting the windshield, but they're not really snowflakes. I think they're like ice flakes. They're like nails. Hails. This is the first time that this place gets hit by northeaster in 3 weeks, and the Weather Forecasting Agency of Washington warns of heavy snow that will reach 10 to 20 centimeters in thickness, and there were also other forecasts that actually warn people against 30 centimeter thick snow. This road will lead to the downtown DC, and this is the road that will lead to the airport. As you can see, the snow on this road has been cleaned. That is to ensure smooth transport to the airport. So mainly now we have domestic flights. If you have any questions, you can reach us. This broadcast today is not just to show you the extreme weather here and the impact on local life. We also wish to explain to you what causes this extreme weather in early spring and what connections it has with climate change. Actually, on March the 5th, over the past 3 weeks, we suffered a total of 3 attacks of northeaster, and the worst situation has led to power outages for 2 million people and even some deaths. Over 9,000 flights have been cancelled. This has been a very long winter for the northeast of America, and the weather has been changing all the time. Within one day, you might be wearing T-shirts, and then in the afternoon, the weather suddenly starts to be very bad and starts snowing. So since March this year, we have seen this consecutive extreme weather, heavy snows, and this kind of impact is really huge. And the impact is not less than the great hurricane that took place in January this year. Aside from snowfalls, actually the snowfall comes from Appalachian Mountain, which is in the Middle East of America, and then it keeps moving northeastward, affecting Washington, D.C., New York, and Philadelphia. Later on, my colleague Zhu Xi will also bring extreme weather forecast to you from other areas. In the United States, usually when extreme weather happens, the federal government as well as your company will ask you to stay at home, so you don't need to drive to work. You won't need to also catch subway to work, and the schools are shut during this weather conditions. So now we're almost at the airport. This should be a busy time, but now you can see very few people. Before we came, we have done some research, and when we set out, that was around 9 or 10 a.m., there were about 3,000 flights having been cancelled. And the Washington, D.C. airport, not just this airport, but other airports as well, non-international airports, about 20% of flights have been cancelled. In a moment, we're going to go in to see what happens. 20%, this means mainly flights to Boston and the areas south of Virginia. Can we go in here? Okay, let's get out of the car. You can see a lot of shuttle buses, and many of them are empty. They are ready to scatter salt on the road to avoid further freezing. Yes, you can see a lot of trucks that are intended to pour salt on the road. Many trucks are here. Well, in this time of year in Washington, D.C., it's really early spring in past years, and people will usually in this time of year go to see flowers. But now we have this extreme weather, and it's very windy and foggy as well. So you can take a look at the surrounding situation. You have over 10 trucks that are lined up here, ready to scatter salt on the ground. So now we have got to an open place. You can see many planes parked here, and most of this area has been covered with heavy snow. Indeed, we have seen planes that are taking off, so not all flights have been affected. The flights going to New York and Boston are affected. Boston is not really snowing, so this storm comes from the southwest of Washington, D.C. and moves northeastward. So that's why it affects Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York, and Boston. And then we have this warning of windstorm, especially along the coast. We will experience very strong wind, as well as very strong waves that will erode the beach. This kind of plane can only take off after the snow has been cleaned away. And it first needs to pick up the passengers and then go to certain spot where you have these specialized trucks as well as workers cooperating to clean away the snow. So that's why it's taking so long time. Well, let's go in the airport to see what happens. If you have any questions, you can interact with us. Again, we are focusing on extreme weather conditions in the United States. It's early spring, but it's snowing very heavily. In the northeast of America, in the past days, we have seen very unpredictable weather conditions, precarious weather conditions. It's now in March, but we have very unsteady temperature, which experts expect to go into the end of April. So only since May can we expect to see steady spring weather. I think when I was spending January the 15th, which is the Lantern Festival in China here, I was actually wearing a t-shirt, but then a few days later, it began to snow heavily. Compared to past days, we have fewer people in the airport, as you can see. Let's see how many flights have been cancelled. You can see a lot have been cancelled. For example, Albania. What's that? Yeah, this is a departure. Those going to Boston have been cancelled. And those to South Carolina, the coast along the east coast have been cancelled, as well as Charleston.
And also flights cancelled to Ohio and also to Cincinnati to Chicago. All cancelled. Usually it's seldom for this airport to provide flights towards the western US, but when we just give it a single glance, you would find most of the flights have already been cancelled, directly cancelled or delayed. Here, this row all flights to New York have been cancelled. So it's not very optimistic with the flights. Even flights to Florida cancelled. Now we'd like to leave the airport, and then we will show you the downtown DC situation. Let's look at the cherry blossoms. The warning of this storm starts by 2 a.m. to 8 a.m. the other day. Now let's get on the car. A lot of flights have been cancelled. Maybe more than 20% of them cancelled. According to the past data, it's 20%. But for those international flights, more than 20% cancelled. It's not very optimistic. If we combine the departures and arrivals, the figure may be even more severe than that. And the visibility is also a problem today for the arrivals of the flights. Yes, I agree. The arrivals of the flights would also be impacted by the visibility and by the storm. The extreme weather is also possibly connected with the climate change. Starting from 2018 and for next decade to come, we would witness more frequent extreme weathers. Today we are talking about the global warming. However, it doesn't mean that everywhere we would see the going up of the temperatures. It would mean that we would witness more frequent changes in temperatures and more extreme weathers, the unusual weathers, and unusual changes with the temperatures. According to the local media and to some experts, the reason why we have this unusual storm and snowfall, for this storm never seen since 75 years. It's the first time for us to have this kind of big snowfall in springtime since 75 years. It's closely connected with the climate change and also with the temperature change in the northern pole. In the northern pole, we have experienced the temperature going up by maximally 27 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere is moving from Appalachian Mountain from southern U.S. to the northeastern U.S. There's a big wind. In the future, according to the forecast of experts, we would expect more unusual changes in temperatures in the northern pole. According to another report, 20 days later, this extreme weather in the U.S. would also impact China. If that is true, I think it's better to be prepared in advance. Another question is that after entrance into power of Donald Trump, they have already quitted the Paris Climate Change Agreement, the Paris Climate Agreement. According to his strategy, they have eliminated climate change from the list of the most important threats to the US. This means that the Trump government has officially ignored this question of climate change. And after his entrance into power, he has also eliminated a lot of articles related to climate change. I have visited West Virginia for a report the restoration of the mountain body after the mining in order to cut the cost of mine exploration. Today, many mine mills have returned to operation. This is actually a realization of one of the promises made by Donald Trump. Another thing is a plan for the energy conservation. The bill passed during the presidency of Mr. Obama. However, this has been also cancelled during the Donald Trump government. And from Canada, we have a tunnel to transport the oil sand from Canada to the US. During the Obama period, it is not allowed. However, later, during the Trump governance, it is allowed. And in the Mexican Gulf, according to the statistics, there's also the program on the gas and oil exploration for an area of 310,000 square kilometers. Now we are closer and closer to the National Square. On the road, you could still see some vehicles, but compared to the usual peak hours, not so many of them. A lot of shoveling cars are working. On the one hand, it's the legislature administration. You could see the misty scenery. The scenery is beautiful. A lot of people are making snowmen, and they are taking photos outside. And those pinky ones are the cherry blossoms covered by snow. We will make a tour here. Snow is most loved by the children. They are the happiest ones. And schools are shut down for the day. I'd like to repeat to you all that we are reporting on the heavy storm weather in the US during the springtime, according to the calendar. Usually, you cannot match the two words together, the snowstorm and spring. And probably it's related to the climate change. And you are welcome to interact with us on the platform. All the museums are shut down too, because in DC, a lot of departments of the government. We will make a turn there.
如果我们刚才再继续一下这个气候变化的问题，其实气候变化不仅仅是
Let's continue with the topic of climate change. Climate change will not only bring to us the extreme weathers. In many places of the U.S., people have already felt the syndromes of the climate change. For example, in the western coast of the U.S., according to the scientific researchers, due to the oceanic flows, we have already achieved the highest level of acidity in the seawater. And seawater plays an important role in the absorption of CO2, and the raising up of the acidity of the seawater would also harm the survival of the shell animals because it's not favorable for the formation of their shells. For the oysters, for example. We will look at the square. We're about to get off the car. The snow is heavy. Usually here we could clearly see the Capitol Hill, the legislature administration of the U.S., but now it's misty. The visibility is quite low. Usually from here to that direction, you could see the monument, but now it has also disappeared. You could see that the snow accumulation becomes thicker and thicker on the ground. It would be about the thickness of 10 to 20 centimeters, and it would also arrive at 30 centimeters maximally. And it's the biggest one we have experienced in Washington, D.C. We will check on the middle of the square, and then we will turn to the cherry blossom side. It's hard for us to see the surroundings. We can hardly see the monument, but it's not that clear. And the Capitol Hill has already disappeared of our vision. It's out of vision now. This direction is for the Capitol Hill, but it's out of vision. So we'll get back to the vehicle. Usually here you could enjoy the spring scenery. You can take off the heavy clothes, take photos with the cherry blossoms. Later we will see the tidal basin with the Jefferson Memory Monument. People usually take photos with cherry blossoms, but this year, unluckily, we only have snow in our photos.
Usually, cherry blossoms will bloom the brightest in March, but and that will also attract a lot of visitors here. But now this year, this sightseeing has been postponed to the end of March and the beginning of April. Even some are saying that cherry blossoms may not go very smoothly this year because of this heavy snow. Now we're ready to get back to our car.
这个刚才我说了一半儿，就是另外一个气候变化带来的这个负影响，就是如果大家
Just now, I was talking about the impact of climate change. Another negative adverse impact is that if you have a plan to visit Florida in September,
会有，但其实甚至你可以在佛罗里达的大街上看见有鱼在那游泳。
on the streets in Florida, you can even see fish swimming across the street. That is one consequence of rising seawater. Because in Florida is said to be one of the regions that are the most heavily hit by rising seawater, and its freshwater is even affected, although it has very rich precipitation. That is because rising seawater has eroded the groundwater there, and fresh water is therefore affected. The city of Miami, just like Cape Town, will be expected to be the next city that will witness the drain of fresh water, groundwater. So many governments are seeing this consequence, but the Trump administration has been insisting on the reduction of the attention to climate change. Again, we're now reporting on extreme weather conditions in the east of the United States, broadcasting live from Washington, D.C. So you can see the surroundings. This should be a site, a scenery for tourists. Traffic here is very small as compared to usual situations. What we are looking at now is the monument. There are some visitors, but very few in number. So these are cherry trees. These rather small trees are cherry trees in front of us. We can see some very tiny blossoms or buds, but because of this weather condition, they are going to bloom later than usual. Maybe that will be postponed to the end of March and the beginning of April. And even some are saying that this year we're not going to see big blossoms at all, and there will be some electronic versions of blossoms replacing the real blossoms. Indeed, we have had a very long winter, and this year is especially so. From September and October to the last year to March and April this year, we have been wearing very thick clothes. So shall we get off here? I would just like to take a look at the cherry blossoms. Maybe we can go a bit further. The extreme weather conditions has resulted in 3 attacks by northeasters, which have made the government of Washington, D.C. shorten the period for work. and it has been shut down. The government has been shut down several times, so people will stay at home. Actually, these trees are cherry trees. I think they look good. They look okay. Now we are at the tidal basin. If you have been following the news, this winter has been particularly long and also extremely cold. And there was a very explosive hurricane or cyclone that has really adversely impacted the economy in Northeast America. So we're now at the tidal basin. So the extreme weather condition this time, the only benefit, the only thing that is not so bad is that it's not very windy. And when we interviewed in the past in Northeast America, we might encounter very cold weather that was also very windy. But today you can see very large snowflakes. But it's not that windy. Well, you can give me an up-close shot at my clothes. You can see very large snowflakes that are connected to each other. The extreme weather conditions not only happen here, but it has also affected the West Coast, and just in these few days, they will experience one of the strongest precipitations this year that might lead to floods. So you can see this extreme weather conditions has flanked the United States from both the East Coast and the West Coast. Usually in early spring, this should be a place where a lot of visitors come visit and see the cherry blossoms. Now you can see some very small buds. Let's take a look at the buds. Well, in past years, it should be blooming, it should be blossoming, but now there's still buds. Okay, that almost brings us to the end of our report in Washington, D.C. And now we are ready to hand over to Zhu Xili in New York. Well, this very heavy snowfall has been going since March this year. This is the fourth heavy snow in 3 weeks that has been brought by northeaster. Northeaster usually happens from October last year to April the next year. That moves eastward and northward to Canada. It's a very strong snowstorm, usually accompanied by heavy snow and heavy wind. And the past 3 northeasters have caused several deaths in the United States, also resulting in power outages for many people. The snowstorm today is even greater than the past 3, and the total volume of snowfall is bigger than the 3 past snowstorms combined. According to the Weather Forecasting Agency of the United States, the thickness of the snow might reach 30 centimeters and even 60 centimeters maximum. So that will set a new record since the year 1958. On March the 21st, 1958, that day, the snow precipitation, the snowfall of New York reached about 29 centimeters, and today is again March the 21st, which is the spring equinox, which brings us the spring, but in this time we are seeing very heavy snow here in New York. This snowstorm is also accompanied by strong wind, and the speed of the wind can reach 32 to 58 kilometers per hour, and the highest speed can reach 70 kilometers per hour. So here we can feel a very strong wind blowing against our face. Here, you might not feel it very strongly, but in the Long Island and in the Queens zone, you will see also great waves caused by strong wind, which will also lead to floods. Here, it might be difficult for you to feel the strong wind, but actually in some areas, strong winds have resulted in the breaking of tree trunks and have led to power outages. Actually, in the past 3 northeaster attacks, severe power outages have already happened, and now tens of thousands of people are still recovering from the past northeasters in terms of their power supply. And this new storm has been another hit on the already fragile power system.
The snowfall has also caused difficulties for people's daily life. The Times Square used to be a very crowded place, but today you can see that the circulation of the cars has been greatly reduced. Usually you could see a lot of passengers here and many tourists here, but today not many people around the area. The mayor of New York has already declared that all the public schools in New York would be shut down for the whole day due to the snowfall. Dear audience, we are here at the Times Square in New York. I've been standing for 5 minutes on the street. You can see that a lot of snowflakes on my clothes. This snowfall could be one sleet accompanied by a strong wind. We could see that on the roads, vehicles are advancing very slowly. They are racing quite slowly and prudently. Usually here you can see a lot of cars at the Times Square. However, today you can see that not too many vehicles on the road. In New York City, the government has already sent warning to the residents. It is suggested to stay at home and avoid going out. This snowstorm has impacted the traffic on the ground and also on the airport with the flights. According to our information, a lot of flights connecting New York and Washington, D.C. and Philadelphia have been cancelled, and we would expect a lot more to be cancelled. According to the Weather Service of the U.S., the volume of snow would set a new record since 1978. Today, the thickness of snow would arrive at 30 centimeters or even 60 centimeters. However, the thickness of the snow on the ground is not that big as expected. Compared with the 3 preliminary rounds of snowfall, this round is at a similar level. Now it's already spring season according to the calendar. The snowflakes are big. However, because the temperatures is also going up, so the accumulation of the snow on the surface of the ground is starting to melt. That's the reason why we could not see a big accumulation of snow on the ground. We could do some interviews. I tried to interview one passenger, but later I found out that he works for the shop. According to the regulations, the employees in the roadside shops are not allowed to do interviews. I tried to interview the local passengers to share with us the impact of the current snowfall on their daily lives or on their trips.
Hi, could you please receive my interview? Uh, 央视新闻、移动网、客户端、微博、今日头条的观众朋友们，我们现在所在的位置呢，就是纽约的时报广
And
场。
dear audience on different platforms of CCTV network, we are now at the Times Square in the New York City. You can see that snowflakes are falling down from the sky.
这场大雪是今年3月份以来纽约遭受的第
This big
4场大雪，也就是3个星期之内
is actually the fourth round of snowstorm
今天的这场大雪
in 3
因为
weeks.
东北风暴
The fourth snowstorm in 3 weeks.
所带来的
And
影响。
today we have the snowfall due to the impact of the northeastern storm.
《时报广场》是世界的十字路口，每天来
At
这里
Times
的游
Square,
人大概有30
We
多万
refer
的
to
样
it
子。
as the
但是
crossroads
今
of
天
the
我们明
world.
显地感觉到
Each day
游
here
人
we
的数
could
量
see
减少了
about
不少。
300,000 people around the area, but today much fewer people due to the snowstorm.
I don't speak English. Hablamos español.
Mexico. Mexico. Oh, cool. What do you think about this snow? This snow
It's
very
beautiful. Beautiful and so cold.
Does it travel or your life?
It's trouble. I don't understand. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. 这2位女士是来自墨西哥，她们说西班牙语。
The two ladies are from Mexico.
嗯，
They speak
是来这
Spanish,
里旅游的，觉得这个雪非
and
常
they
的
said
大，但
that
是很
they
美
are tourists
也是
here,
一种比较独
and
特
they
的旅行
think
经历。
the snow is big and beautiful. This is also an exceptional experience of tourists.
Hi, hi, I'm China. Reporter. Are you local?
it's cold and not so good. It's
It's very cool.
Does it affect your travel?
what?
Does it affect your travel?
We travel and it's a sightseeing tour for us.
Yes.
War das Ihre Frage?
Ich habe die Frage nicht verstanden.
So it affects your travel, right? It have a good. So your travel has been affected by this snow, right?
It's not so good by this weather.
Which country do you come from?
From Germany, from Bremen.
Oh, so in Germany you also have this kind of snow?
So,
jetzt nicht mehr.
na, so,
Ja,
ab und zu. Was heißt denn ab und zu?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
5
这群人是来自德国的，他们说他们没想到在这个季节还能够遇
Those
到
guys
这
are
么大的
from
雪，
Germany.
对他
They
们
said
的
that
旅
they
行还是产
didn't
生了一些
expect
影
such a
响。
big snowfall here in at this moment. This has influenced their trip.
Are you a tourist?
Yes,
Yes. Which country do you come from?
Argentina.
Argentina. Oh yes. So in your country, do you see this kind of snow?
No, we don't see this kind of snow. Actually, today it's starting autumn.
Okay. So what do you think about it? Do you like it, or do you think it is bad for your travel?
I think it's different. It's nice. I like it. It's a bit complicated, but it's nice all the same.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Bye.
Bye. 这一对年轻的情侣是来自于阿根廷他们说他们在
This young
德国
couple
这里
comes from
没有碰到这
Argentina.
样大的雪，所以
They said
今天
that
来到
they're
这里
in their
感受
country
到
they have
不
never
同的一
met
种
such a
经
big
历，觉得
snowfall.
非常好。虽
And
然
today
说对自己
in
的
New
旅
York
行
City
还是
they
有
have
很大
had
的
a
影响
totally
但是
different
有独特的
experience. And
在
they
一个他
said
乡
that it
感
has
受到这
influenced
场
their
大雪的
trip,
经历
but
让
it's
他
still
们感到很
special
新奇很
in a
兴奋
foreign country to have this special experience of a snowfall. This made them excited.
央视新闻移动网客户端微博今日头条的观众朋友们，大家好！我们现在所在的地方呢，就是纽约
So
时报
friends
广场。
that are watching this live broadcast. Again, we are now in the Times Square in New York. Today is a bit different because we are seeing this heavy snow, which is the fourth heavy snow experienced by New York in 3 weeks, brought by northeasters. Northeasters usually strike from October last year to April, which move northeastward until they reach Canada. The previous 3 rounds of snowfalls have already caused several deaths in the United States and hundreds of thousands of people suffering from power outages. And this heavy snow has also led to power outages to New York and New Jersey. Actually, the previous rounds of snowstorms have caused already power outages, and many regions and families are still recovering from past power outages. Now, this new storm have strikes again, so that has made things worse.
场大雪给人们的出行带来了很多的不方便，而且呢，纽约市的所有公立学校。
This snowstorm has brought about many inconveniences for people's travel, and all public schools in New York are shut down for this day. Actually, today is a day for SAT exams. SAT exams are like college entrance exams in China. But because of this snowstorm striking New York, the date for SAT exam has been postponed. So that has affected many high school graduates and their families, high school students and their families.
我们也可以在现场可以看到，这里的车辆行驶的速度明显的变慢。
We can also see the vehicles are moving slower compared to usual because this is a day of heavy snow and strong wind. It's very wet on the road. Here we can also see smaller number of tourists, but still there are some visitors taking photos. And just now during the interviews, many tourists said that indeed the snow has caused some inconveniences for their travel, but Times Square with snow, with falling snow, also gives them another feeling, especially for people coming from Latin America. Seeing this snow is really something different. It's a beautiful experience. Today is March the 21st, which is spring equinox, but we are having this very big snow. Every time people get hit by extreme weather conditions, they will be more concerned about climate change. So here we would like to distinguish two concepts. Climate is different from weather because climate is a long-term situation of weathers. And several weather conditions within one day or 1 month cannot reflect the overall climate change in the globe. Hello, are you tourists from China? Yes, we're students, but now we're having this trip. We study in Los Angeles. So when you travel here, you have the snow. What do you think about it? Well, it's very special because in our place, it is very rare to see this kind of snow. I think this gives me a very special feeling. And it's very beautiful. The Times Square in snow is very beautiful. But what inconveniences has the snow brought? Well, I think it's okay because we don't really have a plan. We just want to take a look around. I think many flights have been canceled. So will that affect your journey back? Because we will not go back until Saturday, and by that time the snow will have been would have stopped. On this day in March, particularly on the spring equinox, it's a very special experience. It's also a rare experience. Just now, in my broadcast, I also said that people will question climate change whenever they get hit by extreme weather conditions. But you have to know that climate is different from weathers, because weathers are short-term, but climate is a very long-term situation. In one place, within one time period, cold weathers really cannot reflect the overall climate change or global warming. Actually, in March, the frequent occurrences of snow may be a strong signal of climate change and really shows the urgency of combating climate change. Just as one UN official said, climate change has been happening far faster than our actions. So that really shows we're in a very urgent situation. Again, everyone, we are now in Times Square of New York. You can see heavy snowflakes coming down on the square, on the Times Square, on the skyscrapers as well as the streets. In March, on March the 21st, which is the spring equinox, people usually would expect to see very beautiful spring days and warm days, but instead we get this very heavy snow. So that also informs us about one reality, that is, climate is changing, and this extreme weather condition might in some way reflect the global climate change. And that really shows the urgency for us to combat global climate change. So back to our studio in Beijing.